Our true creativity comes from our unconscious, this soulful part of ourself that is, I think, divine and universal, and everyone has it, but a lot of people aren't in touch with it, and this is a way to get in touch with it. And sometimes you feel as though you have gotten in touch with it, and other times it feels kind of dead and like, what am I doing? This seems... But more often than what I just stated, you develop this connection, and it sticks with you. You end up surprising yourself. And that's what I look for and hope for. But again, we have no control. All you can do is start to build this relationship and do the homework, and then you have to jump off the cliff on the set and pray that it's going to serve you.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Mary Kay Place is an actor. She sat down with me in New York City to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you begin your process of inhabiting a character?
Well, first of all, there's a big distinction between television and a film like Diane, which comes along once in a lifetime, for me anyway. So that's a film where I'm in every scene, and I've never done that before. So I had enormous amounts of work to do, and I did it way before I knew that we had the money. Because I knew the minute we got the money, it was all go, 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 and there would be not enough time to really do the work that was necessary. So I just jumped in and I said, you know what? It doesn't matter if we never do get the money. This process that I'm going to embark on I'm going to learn a lot from it, whether we ever make the movie or not. And it's fun and it's exciting, and I want to do it now, whether we make the film or not. And I had no idea. That's very different from you get a job on a television show. And typically, for me, and I think most people, unless you're a superstar, you get it at the last minute, so that suddenly 3 days later you're doing 4 scenes very quickly in one day. So that's another process.
Yes. But I'm interested in that process too, because I want to know what you need before you arrive on that set. Like, what do you need in that case? Let's just take that one.
Well, we'll start by reading the script. I have an immediate instinct. This is for me. This is not for me. Occasionally, I'll, I won't know for sure. There will be some interest for one reason and some, I don't know if I want to do this or not for another reason.
So you turn down a lot of things.
I have, it depends. Certain times, it just depends on what comes in, the coming and goings of possibilities. And there are times when nothing is offered, absolutely nothing. But typically, as I look back on my life, those are times when I needed to be dealing with something else besides work. I had other aspects of my life that needed attention.
Right.
And because the work is so all-encompassing, it's hard to do. I always, I'm so happy I wasn't parenting during the busiest part of my life, because I think those are 2 really hard, all-inclusive jobs.
Oh, yeah. And
so, but anyway, we're getting off. So we'll talk about Diane first. So we went through a couple of drafts of Kent and I. Certain scenes were puzzling to me and I didn't think quite worked. And the ones we ended up with, I loved all of them, but it was a process of finding.
So you were, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you were kind of giving him notes based on what you were seeing for what you can do.
Well, and just the overall flow of the piece, or what is this scene supposed to add to our story, or I'm not sure it accomplishes it. And I have to say Kent was totally open and receptive and collaborative and just generous on every level, and I felt like we had a unbelievably smooth back and forth and working relationship, which was absolutely thrilling. I went through the script, and I have worked with Sandra Seacat attended her acting classes years before when she had them, and been coached by her occasionally, and her proteges, but go through the script page by page and just write clues down about the characters. So it could be a word here, a description there, that give me clues to who this person is that are in the script. So you write all of that down, then certain ones jump out at you and you do work on it, and you also give yourself, and this sounds very weird and woo-woo and ridiculous, but it's along the teachings of Carl Jung about dream work. So you give yourself dream assignments and you closely track down and try to record and remember all of your dreams during this process. And then you work with the images from the dreams.
Oh my God.
And you do active imagination, which is another Jungian technique where you engage in a dialogue with these dream images. And it can be a person or a place or, a thing. And you have a conversation with that. And it's sometimes nothing happens and other times it's shocking. And it gives you this, the process builds a bridge to the unconscious where the surprises, the things the intellect could not make up or create, but they come as a gift from the unconscious. And that's when you want to do a dance and jig in the middle of your kitchen. Because you can't force that.
Right.
You have no control over it. You can just begin to communicate with the unconscious in meditation or in this active imagination process, and other people have other forms of communication. But a lot of you can do body work. A gesture may come up in the dream and you repeat the gesture and stand up and get it in your body. And so getting into your body in the present moment is because then this stuff has the ability to pop up and flow up.
Yes. There's some people listening that might be like, okay, but why are you building that bridge to the unconscious? Like, what is the real reason? And then you do a jig when you're in the kitchen when you're getting something. But this is way far away from the set.
Way far away.
So what is, why do you need that bridge?
Because the intellect is not as interesting as the unconscious. I believe, and I didn't make this up, I've read this and I believe the people that I've read, that our true creativity comes from our unconscious. This soulful part of ourself that is, I think, divine and universal, and everyone has it. But a lot of people aren't in touch with it, and this is a way to get in touch with it. And sometimes you feel as though you have gotten in touch with it, and other times it feels kind of dead and like, what am I doing? This seems... But more often than what I just stated, you develop this connection, and it sticks with you, and it's so much because you end up surprising yourself. And that's what I look for and hope for. But again, we have no control. All you can do is start to build this relationship and do the homework. And then you have to jump off the cliff on the set and pray that it's going to serve you. And things are going to bubble up and pop out of your mouth, or a particular tone. And like I said, when you have a gesture in your dream, you repeat these gestures. And you literally embody it.
Wow.
And something happens, and I don't know what it is. And I used to be, for much of my life, very literal about things. And it's only in recent years that I've, and this sounds pretentious, but I'm going to say it anyway, that I've started to trust the mystery of things. And I certainly did in Diane.
We need to just stop here for just a quick second and say it paid dividends. There is evidence of this in the performance. So it's not like you're saying all this and then someone can be like, wow, she really wasted her time. You know what I mean? So what keeps coming up in these conversations, and you're really hitting on it now in a way that maybe other people haven't focused on and hit it, is that everyone's dancing around this elusive thing in a performance, you know, and sometimes it just comes up and it's captured, you know, and then the idea is just
and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
That's
And the
the
idea
other
is that
thing
just
we
like
have to
almost like you're setting the
acknowledge.
table for it.
Yes.
You know, and then it arrives and it can
You're
be captured.
inviting the spirit to come.
Inviting the spirit to come. Yes.
And the spirit may come or may not, but it can't come in every scene anyway, because you know
Right.
it has its own intelligence. It has its own. I have to surrender.
Mm-hmm.
The ego has to surrender. That's like a meditation thing, but it also, I think, applies
Yes.
to this process.
And I think, and not to dump on myself, but I really think that that's why I'm not a great actor. It's because I can't lose that part. I haven't detached enough from that part. I think too much. My ego is.
I've done all of those as well, and I think it's practice. It's like, again, the more I studied mindfulness, which has not been that long, but I see that it's about being present after this preparation and then receiving. And we're all a patriarchal culture where it's about power, it's about control, it's about I'm in charge. And we are in charge, but at a certain point after the homework, we're sort of just have to surrender.
Yes.
But we can only do that when we've done the homework and we know our lines.
Yes. So you said that it actually keeps coming up, meaning like in your room, you're doing this dream work, you're doing the repeating of the motions of the gestures, and then it's not like it goes away then, right? I mean, it keeps.
It all goes into a big pot, a big stew pot or soup pot, and you just keep adding ingredients and experiences, and it may or may not, but it must add up to something.
Yes.
And then, so you go through page by page, clue by clue, and think about it and do work with it or not. On my scenes, I go through and I type everything, all the dialogue, everybody else's dialogue. My dialogue is in bold. I put it all together on one page. The process of doing that somehow does something. I don't know what. Then that's how I work on my lines when I memorize. But that's more towards the end.
Yeah.
You make associations with these images and clues that you pull out of the script. And what does this mean to me?
Yeah.
And you try to connect your own humanity and your own life experience, or find a metaphor. So when I died in 4 different projects, I said, what part of me needs to die to bring new life? So instead of torturing yourself, which I used to do when I didn't understand the process so much early on, I'd go, or my so-and-so died, and I would just be miserable.
Yeah.
But if you find the metaphor that works for you about bringing in new energy, the old energy that no longer serves you has to die and make room for the new energy that you need for this next phase of your life, then it's joyous.
Yeah.
Then it's like a positive experience. And then you're just into, what is the breathing like on YouTube when you find people in their death rattle? I had to do a death rattle in one film. And I thought, I'm going to Google death rattle. And then I started noticing this breathing pattern. And so I started practicing the breathing pattern, and then suddenly you're in a world that you don't even know about.
Wow.
So I just sometimes make up things, and I've Googled a million things because I had to, in Diane, shoot up heroin, which was a dream, but the dream world uses images that are not rational for the person, and then when you work with the dream, you see where they connect up. But I had to look at 900 YouTubes about people shooting up to see what similarities there were and how long it took for them to kind of go out,
Right.
and then what was the behavior out,
Yeah.
So again, I was worried about that scene, but my scene partner was so soulful, and his eyes, just soul was, I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I all I had to do was look at him, and I thought, I'm okay. I'll just figure this scene out.
Wow.
And so there was a guy on the set who was one of the crew, had been a musician, heroin addict. And I asked him a few things. I said, come up and arrest me right away if what you see me do in any take is not legitimate.
Wow.
And he said, I'll keep an eye out. And I said, please get over here and do a citizen's arrest right away.
Wow.
And, but so you sort of make up certain other things in the process, but it's something as simple as following a breath pattern that you see on YouTube of someone dying will take you to an interesting place.
Wow.
And I didn't know that before I tried it.
Right. With all of this, and you're making it sound like this is all late in your career, that you exploring all of this. Do you wish that you found this stuff earlier?
I think for me, I found it when I was able to understand it. Early on, I had, in high school, I had a speech class, speech/drama class. That was as close as we had to any dramatic class. And I learned so much from that class because the last 15 minutes of class, every day of high school for 3 years, we did improvs. We had some really gifted people, and we had some average or not so gifted people. And every day we got up and made fools out of ourselves. And people laughed themselves silly when we were good and laughed really hard when we were bad. But the lesson was we had the freedom to be good or bad. And there was no fear in the room because people were willing to be laughed at because, like this one girl went, house of fire, house of fire. And we ran around saying house of fire for the next 3 years. But people didn't care if they failed or if they were ridiculously bad. And that freedom of being okay with failing was great. And then later in Hollywood, I was in a famous improv class and I thought, why does this feel so bad? It's not fun like our high school. And it was because people were afraid of failing in front of the other. They were very competitive. And you can't change the atmosphere. And so it wasn't free in that way.
If that was a set, would you say it's the director's job to create an environment where fear of failure is gone?
Yes, and it's very hard for people to know how to do that unless they are not afraid themselves.
Yes.
But the energy of the set always starts at the top. It's with the star, it's with the director, it's with, if it's a big name producer, it's with them.
Yeah.
And then it filters down.
Were you worried about Kent not having directed a feature film before, a fiction film?
Well,
for what you needed from a director, were you worried you weren't going to get enough of?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because he was so open about the script, and I felt like I was prepared to do the part. But what I needed him more than anything was to say that I didn't believe that, or no, that's too much, or I didn't need specific, because I had already prepared so strong. I was going to do what I was going to do, but I needed him, if it wasn't working, to say, ooh, that was too much, or I need more, and literally I had him read to me this poem, because he has this really deep voice, and I was so moved by the way he would read the poem when I was in my dying scene.
Wow.
I kept having him read that poem before every take. And Kent is a very Zen-like guy.
He seems like
he's
that,
calm as can be, and he's smart, and he's open, and he's not bossy, and he's not controlling. He's not a controlling person at all. He doesn't do power things. He's just none of those things. So he's really easy and wonderful to work with, but I trusted his taste because he has very firm ideas about what he likes.
Yeah.
But did it cross my mind? Yes, but not enough to make me say I'm not going to do this because I don't think you can direct. I mean, all those things pass through your mind.
Yeah.
I wondered if I could do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If I could sustain if I had the stamina to be in every scene. So I was worried for all of us and then not worried for all of us.
Yeah.
I would pass through. But once we got going, I never worried again.
Yeah.
Because it just was, and as dark as that film was for some people, we had such a blast doing it. The joy of every scene, figuring out the rhythm, the movement pattern, and thus the rhythm of the movement, the rhythm of the dialogue, just those little intricate puzzle pieces, because to me it's all about rhythm.
Yes.
The scene has a rhythm. It's like music.
Yes.
And finding the rhythm of each scene, and they're all different from each other.
I hate that that's true.
Why?
Because it bothers me. I've heard actors say that, and first time I heard it, I was like, I don't want to believe this.
Why?
Because that means that, like, I don't know about rhythm in my life. Like, is our scene right now?
We have great rhythm right now. Because it's
Am
because
I
it's
just rhythmic?
I mean, and
am I rhythmic? Am I
yes,
just
because you know why? Because you're being yourself.
Okay, but so then if we were going to reenact this scene, you and I as actors, we would have to try and find our rhythm again there.
No, you know how to play yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're being yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm being myself. So we're having a natural rhythm.
So what you're saying is when you're playing somebody else, you have to find that character's rhythm, and then the
I think
rhythm.
the scene dictates the rhythm, the emotion of the scene. When I go to my son's house and he's totally doped out, that has a slow, lethargic. It's about listening. It's about, and he can't focus, and it's just like plowing through mud, and I don't even know if that describes it, but it's slow.
Yeah.
And it's inch by inch, and there are pauses, and it has but you don't know, it's slow, but you've got to find the rhythm of the scene. Only by doing it can you figure that out. And it's in the moment.
Yeah, and you can't think about it too much, I guess.
You don't think about it at all till you get there and start doing it, and then it comes, and then you begin to discover what it is.
Right.
And maybe I think I've got a rhythm, and somebody else may go, well, that's not my rhythm. So I don't mean to act like I know all the rhythms, because I may not.
Right. No, I get what
But that's what I seek in the course of a scene. I want to find, and sometimes it's frenetic, and sometimes it's normal, and sometimes it's, it's all different things.
And I'm imagining that there's some directors that don't understand this at all.
Yes.
So what
Big
I've learned
ones.
again from this.
Yeah.
But when you do have a director that understands you and understands the rhythm and understands is it just like
It's so fun. It's just bliss.
Then it's bliss, yeah.
Heaven. And also sometimes they can have an idea that comes from their mind that you would never come up with. But what I find interesting, that happens to me a lot, and I know other people that's happened to, I have a very specific attitude about a certain approach. And I've planned it out, and I know how I'm doing it, but I do it very low key and in a subtle way. And suddenly the director says, oh, you know what? And he tells me to do what I've just been doing. And that's so good. And I said, well, I think I've actually been doing that, but I'll do more of that it's too...
It's not reading.
If it's not,
Yeah.
But that happens a lot.
Oh, interesting.
And it doesn't matter who thought of it, but it's a little frustrating sometimes when you are doing it, but maybe you're doing it in such a subtle way.
That's the valuable input. If it's not reading, someone's got to let you know.
Yeah.
If they move on, and you're like, well, how come no one told me that wasn't happening?
Well, it's not that it's not happening. It's happening enough for them to think they just thought of it.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's
interesting.
But it's subtle.
Right.
But it shows me I'm on track, actually.
Right.
But maybe I need to goose it up a little bit more. But I usually end up going back to the same level, because once
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's out there what I'm doing, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
But at least I know I'm reading. It's reading, even if it's barely reading.
Right.
But anyway, it's really fun when you work with directors that you're on the same wavelength. Because it's just exciting, and it's so, they have great ideas, it feeds your ideas, and it's a blast. And when you're in flow like that, it's that holistic feeling of just time flies by, you don't even know.
Yeah. That's and we can get really new agey if we talk about that, because I think like that's like when people are reaching their creative potential, and then you're all in the timeless space. I believe in that stuff. I'm sorry.
Oh, I totally do.
And that's why you don't care. You don't even remember when you ate.
No, you have no time is out of, you don't even have any sense of it.
Right. And it's so rare though. Yes. And speaking of flow, you said, because you only shot in 20 days.
Right.
And you said a flow set in, and we talked about this, and the unconscious shows up once you're engaged with it. When you do it over and over, it develops more. We kind of talked about this, but I wrote this down because you said this in another interview, and I was like, okay, wait, I want her to explain this, but you kind of explained that. But and that's the other thing I was saying, like the unconscious shows up. It's like, that was kind of what we were talking about, I guess. Setting the table, inviting
doing the
it
homework, preparation, deep preparation, and building that connection to the unconscious. But I think in response to that quote you just read, I think I was talking about the fact that having the first time I'm a lead in a movie, so that I'm working every single day, so that flow just continues. You don't have to gear up again.
Right.
Because normally I'd work one day here, 3 days later.
And you'd kind of come out of it, have to come back in.
And kind of gear up again. But being in every scene, there was a continual flow. Right. The energy didn't totally back off. It kind of hovered and stayed around.
Yes. Like, let's just say there's a long lunch, and you had a particular great moment right before lunch. Like, what are you doing to keep it around?
You can't guarantee anything is going to repeat. That happened when Andrea Martin and I are in the hallway after I ripped that woman out for telling the homeless person they had too much food or whatever. Yeah. And then she said, "You've got to calm down." I had a great take on that, and I never could repeat it again. I never could repeat it again.
But is that take in the movie?
No. But it didn't matter.
Yeah, right.
Because everything can't be the most emotional. It maybe have just been a great experience for me personally, but not for the audience. I don't know. But I've had many times when was really in a space, couldn't repeat it.
What do you say at that point? Do you say, "Hey, Kent, I need one more, at least one more here," or do you just say, "We're on a 20-day schedule here. I don't want to hold up everybody. I'm sure it's fine." I say
both of those things
at the same time.
No, I'll say if I really think I need another one, but a lot of times I have another one and it's not really any better than the last one. Yeah. But the other thing I'll say about 20 days, which was shocking, I never felt like we didn't have enough time. There's something that happens, again, not in every situation, but in something like Diane, where we were just, everyone was in sync, and we had we had a young, inexperienced crew, but they were totally committed and in it, and it was like, oh my God, the energy was so sweet and generous, and I loved them so much, and but I find this thing happens where time expands when you need it, and somehow you have enough time.
Amazing, right?
Like on the death scene, I was worried that we wouldn't have time to block it, and it was going to be a blocking situation for me that I wouldn't know till I was in the space, had the props, was doing the thing. I wouldn't know what we were supposed to be doing. And neither would Kent. And I knew that. And so I said, we've got to go over there first and and have all the props
Get your hands on things.
and run through it and rehearse before without the crew standing around waiting for us, because I knew that would never work.
And did he allow that?
Yes, of course, we did it. And so those kinds of things, we didn't have to do that too many times, but I wanted to see the bar before, and I was worried about the bar. Kent said the bar is going to be fine. I said, I don't know.
What were you worried about?
Just the configuration of it. But by the time Set got in there and switched things around and moved this machine in there, it was fine. So that was false worry on my part. But we had enough time. I never felt like, oh my God, we're not going to get this.
Yeah.
And when I was walking in the woods, that was such an interesting day. And it just felt so, I'd never done anything like that before. And it was really an amazing experience.
I saw this in the movie theater, and at one point I might have turned to my wife and said, like, look at that scene where we're seeing all those wonderful actors of a certain age.
Oh my God, the
and I'm
best.
like, we don't see this.
Yeah.
And like, I'm in a movie theater seeing this.
Isn't it the best? I just got a chill when you said that. It's so great.
I really noticed
that women are the center of the action.
Yes. And these amazing actors.
And these amazing, wonderful women.
In one of these interviews, you said, this is the first time that you didn't demand all the answers from the script. You allowed yourself to live in the mystery.
Yes.
That's said a lot to me. It said that you like to have tightly
I needed to know needed the facts. I needed to know the information. I don't understand this. I don't understand that.
Well, what was this then?
But in bad scripts, there's stuff you don't understand because it's not really written well.
Yeah.
This script, there was stuff I didn't understand, but I whipped through this script. I didn't pause when I read it. I kept flowing from and I can read the same scene 5 times ago. Mary Kay, keep your mind on the script.
If it's bad, you mean,
if it's bad, I can't even get through it.
Right, I know what you mean.
And so this, I was always able to just flow. And when there was a bump in the road, Kent and I would talk and it would be worked out. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, when you asked me, did you say you're learning a lot? Throughout the years, I've picked up clues, and I went back to Stella Adler, lesson 1, acting class with my niece. Took a beginning class because I used to have trouble crying because I would torture my subconscious, and it said, fuck you, you're not crying. You got to figure out a new way that's not so hard on your system.
Right.
And so I had to go back and figure out ways to tap into what I've been talking about.
Wow.
So each year, if the years gone by, I've learned more and more and built. And also I've been majorly interested in Marion Woodman, who's a Jungian psychologist who wrote about the feminine archetype. And that holding tension of the opposites till this third thing emerges. And the idea of just holding the tension of the mystery, and if you do the homework, you'll something will come. I've listened to her lecture tapes every couple of years since the 80s, late 70s, and each time I listen, I go, oh my God, I get this in a whole other way now.
Wow. So
all of that, and I had been listening to all those again, informed this new ability to trust. And also just working with the dreams, these new awarenesses every time I hear her words again, and things click into place in a way that didn't previously. And so that's why I was able to trust in that mystery this time, which again sounds like, ooh, but it works.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting.
Anybody who's really saying, wow, this is a woo-woo moment in acting, like this is that doesn't understand this thing. This thing is woo-woo.
It is woo-woo. And I think if you're a painter, you have another process, but you get to this woo-woo.
Right.
And if you're a musician, it doesn't matter what kind of artist you are.
Right.
The creative act has these mysteries about them, and it doesn't come from the intellect helps the process, but it doesn't, the true surprises do not come from the intellect.
On the way down here, I was riding my bicycle, and I've been mulling over a story that I want to film, and I had a breakthrough about the ending.
Good.
And,
on the bike.
On the bike, and I wept, and I thought it was so beautiful.
That's so great, because it's interesting. You were doing physical, embodied.
I think that's really a lot of times this happens on the bike. Yeah, stuff like this, breakthroughs like that. But I had this moment where I was like, I felt like I was not only was I felt like I was watching a great movie, you know. Now that I came up with that ending, like I was visualizing it, but it felt so good. Like I noticed my heart rate was like I was in love.
Yeah.
You know,
it was pounding.
It was pounding. It was like
you went. I got it. I got it.
Yes, but here's the sad part. I felt this before, and I've made the little thing then, and it went through an agonizing process where it ended up not being anything like that at all.
You mean when you shot it?
When I shot it, or when I wrote it even. Sometimes it even, just getting it to the page.
I understand that.
Okay,
I know what you're talking about.
This thing dies. And I would just want to know because I know you're a writer too, and so you can answer this as a creative person other than an actor, but I really want to know, like, as an actor, because especially with Diane, or with anything, when you know this is going to happen and you have in your mind your performance, you know, or what this could be, or you're reading the script and then when it actually is, no matter how good it is, I'm telling you, and you know, I'm not the first one to say this was a great performance, but it just in your mind, the death of whatever that was.
I never had a vision of my performance in my mind. I think it's different than the process of writing when you get the idea.
Yes.
I had hope. I mean, I loved the script. I loved how bizarre it was, and the fact for the first time that I didn't understand everything. But I somehow, it held my attention, as I said, from the time I wrote it. But I didn't know what she looked like. And I wanted her to not look like all the characters I've ever played. And yet I still have the same face, so I couldn't, and I'm not like people that totally transform themselves. But I just wanted her to be different from any character that I had played before. But there's also the essence of me that's in there, so I can't change that.
Yes.
But some actors can.
Yes.
But I didn't have this set image in my mind of who or how I was going to be. It came in the moment to moment experience. But I know that feeling of suddenly having a vision of this idea.
Yes.
And then when you come to write it, it fades away, or you can only grab little pieces of it. And so I hope you made notes the minute you got here.
No.
But because it is ephemeral. I mean, you just can't. And so. But I heard a great story that I'm not going to say who the characters are. But a young artist wrote a brilliant script, and then in the process of making it, there was trouble with the studio, and there was trouble with the mentors, and hung in there, and almost had got depressed about it, but kept hanging in, and failing and failing and failing. But they kept saying, it's close, change the ending. And after all this time, they are now shooting this new thing. And he failed and failed and failed, but he got it right because he's talented.
That's great.
And he's hung in there in all his mental mishigas that kept going through his head. Yeah. And I love this story because I think it's the story we all have to endure at various points in our lives. We must go on, and we can't give up. And I had a screenplay once, years ago in the early 70s that I was so sick of, and there were so many, and I didn't know how to fix it, and there were so many people insisting on putting, and it just, it never came to fruition for a number of political reasons. They wanted to make it a lot, but I knew we didn't have it where it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I love this story, so you just got to keep working on it.
Yes. Yes.
Till you get it. And yes, there will be things that held great promise.
Yes.
And didn't show up on the radar blip.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's going to happen. It happens all the time. We have to appreciate the experience.
Yes.
And do it again and just go right back in there if that's what we're meant to do.
Right. And maybe it is like love. You know, when that first beginning of love is wonderful. You'll never have to have it again.
Yeah,
but then when you work on the relationship, another thing comes up.
Yes.
That's even greater than that first thing, right?
And it's more solid.
Yes. That's the hope, maybe.
Yeah.
Mary Kay Place. Thank you.
Peter, God love.
Yes. Yes.
God love Peter.
Amen.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.